During my recovery, my son's wife told me, "You're a weak old fool. Don't try to play family." She took my pillow and tossed it in the trash. My son said nothing as I shivered in the cold. My voice was steady as I said, "You'll learn who the fool really is when you read my final words." I had a stroke 9 months ago. It hit hard, left me with partial paralysis on my left side and a limp I still haven't shaken. I lived alone in a small house outside Hickory, North Carolina, and for a while I was managing. But after the second fall, when I laid on the floor for 5 hours before the mailman heard me yelling, I knew I couldn't stay by myself anymore. My oldest son, Mark, offered to take me in. I hesitated. I didn't want to be that dad, the one who gets dumped in the corner of someone else's life. But Mark said all the right things. "Your family. You were always there for me. We'll make this work." I said yes. I sold my house, gave away most of my things, took the money, paid off some medical bills, and handed Mark a good chunk to help with expenses. That was my mistake. $35,000 wired to his account before I even moved in. At first, things were okay. Their house was decent. 2 stories, suburban neighborhood outside Charlotte. Mark worked in IT. Tanya worked part-time at a dental office. They had 2 kids, teenagers, mostly stayed out of the way. I tried to do the same. Stayed quiet, kept to my room, never complained. I even paid for groceries a few times. Tried to show I was grateful. But Tanya, she never wanted me there. That was clear from the first week. She never said it outright at first. It was little things. Passive digs. I'd hear her tell Mark, "Your dad's sitting in the living room again, watching his shows," or "You left the bathroom light on again." I let it slide. She was stressed. People act out. But it got worse. She'd serve dinner and forget to make a plate for me. I'd have to ask, and she'd give me that fake smile. "Oh, I didn't think you'd be eating with us." She'd accidentally unplug the space heater I used in my room. Once she rearranged the furniture while I was napping, and I fell trying to get to the bathroom in the dark. When I tried to talk to Mark about it, he shrugged. "She's just adjusting, Dad. It's a big change for all of us." I started writing things down. Every slight. Every cruel word. Just to keep track. My memory isn't what it used to be, and I didn't want to lose the thread of what was happening to me. At night, I'd sit on the edge of my bed with my little notebook and write down what they said, what they did, how it made me feel. Then came that night. It was early March. Cold snap hit Charlotte, and the house was freezing. My hands ached from the chill. I asked Tanya earlier in the day if I could have an extra blanket, or even just turn the heat up a few degrees. She ignored me, looked right through me. I didn't push. I went to my room early. I was exhausted anyway. But when I lay down, I noticed right away something was missing, my pillow. It was old, sure, but it was mine. Something I'd brought from my old house. I couldn't sleep without it. It smelled like home. I searched the room. Nothing. Closet, chair, floor. Then I hobbled down the hall, checked the laundry. Still nothing. Something told me to check the kitchen. And there it was. In the trash. My pillow, balled up under some coffee filters, a greasy pizza box, and Tanya's smoothie cup. Like garbage. I just stood there, staring at it. My hand shook as I reached in and pulled it out. It was wet. Smelled like dishwater and rotting fruit. I turned around and Tanya was behind me, arms crossed, watching. She said it plain. No emotion. Just words that hit like a punch. "You're a weak old fool. Don't try to play family. You're just here until you drop." And standing a few feet away, leaning on the fridge, was Mark, my son, the one I gave everything to. He heard it all. He didn't flinch, didn't say a word, just looked down at his phone like none of it mattered. I felt the rage rise in my throat. I'd never hit a woman in my life, and I wasn't about to start now, but the way she looked at me, that smug look. It took everything I had not to scream. Instead, I said the only thing I could say. My voice was low but steady. "You'll learn who the fool really is when you read my final words." She smirked. "Is that a threat?" "No," I said. "It's a promise." They thought I was weak. They thought because I couldn't walk right and needed help getting out of the tub, that I was done. But I'm not done. They don't know what I've prepared. They don't know what's coming. Not yet. After that night, something in me hardened. I stopped trying to be part of their family. I ate alone. I kept to my room. I didn't speak unless I had to. I didn't ask for anything. Not a ride, not a blanket, not a damn thing. Tanya seemed pleased. Mark barely noticed. But I was watching. I was listening. And I was writing everything down. Every insult. Every act of cruelty. Like the time Tanya unplugged my mini fridge when I had insulin inside. I found it warm the next morning. When I confronted her, she shrugged and said, "Maybe don't keep your meds and your toys." I ended up in the ER that night with my blood sugar out of control. The doctors asked questions. I didn't say much. I wasn't ready yet. Or the day Mark let his teenage son, my grandson, mock me at the dinner table. I'd spilled a little water trying to hold the cup steady. The boy laughed and said, "Grandpa's turning into a toddler." Tanya laughed too. Mark just said, "Don't be mean," without looking up. That was it. No correction. No respect. Nothing. One afternoon, I overheard Tanya on the phone with someone, I think her sister. She was in the kitchen, talking low. But I caught this much. "It's not like he's gonna last another year. We'll get the room back soon. Then we can finally turn it into the office." That same day, Mark asked if I'd consider updating my will just in case. He even said he found someone online who could help me make it all official. I looked him dead in the eye and said, "Already taken care of. My lawyers got it on file." He didn't push. But I saw the look in his eyes. They thought I was sitting there, day after day, fading away. But what I was doing was planning. Quietly, slowly. Every insult they gave me, I turned into fuel. I started talking to my lawyer more often. Called him weekly. Sent photos. Sent voice notes. Logged dates. I even recorded some conversations when Tanya got bold enough to curse me out when no one else was around. And then came the big one. My Social Security check didn't come through 1 month. I called about it, thinking maybe it was delayed. Turned out it had been rerouted. Someone had changed the bank account on file. I filed a report right away. When I asked Mark about it, his face went blank. He didn't deny it. Just said, "Maybe you made a mistake." I didn't have proof yet, but I knew. And that was the day I made the decision. They weren't just ungrateful. They weren't just cruel. They were thieves. And I would deal with them. Not with violence. Not with yelling. But in a way they'd never expect. I wasn't just preparing to leave behind a letter. I was preparing a fire. One that would burn through their comfort, their pride, and the future they thought they had. About 2 months after the Social Security incident, I got a letter in the mail. Not from the government. It was from a storage facility in Hickory. Apparently, someone had tried to close out a unit I didn't even remember I still had, something I rented years ago for extra tools, keepsakes, and old paperwork. The letter said, "We need confirmation from the original lessee before closing the account." I hadn't been there in nearly a decade, but I never canceled it. I took a cab, burned most of the cash I had left for that ride, but I needed to see it for myself. When I got there, the manager pulled up the records. Someone had tried to use a power of attorney, my name signed digitally, to access the contents and terminate the unit. They gave an address. It was Mark's. I asked to open the unit. Inside was nothing of great value to them, but everything to me. Original deeds, insurance policies from before I moved in with Mark, photos, a fireproof box with my wife's letters, and some legal paperwork from my work pension. All of it nearly gone. If they'd gotten to it first, they could have erased every trace of my independent life, controlled my finances, closed out accounts, and claimed I had nothing before I came to them. I took everything back that day. That night, I called my lawyer and changed the executor on my estate to a local friend I used to work construction with, a guy who owed me nothing but had always treated me right. A week later, I took another step. I contacted Adult Protective Services. I told them everything. Slowly, carefully, with documentation and dates. I didn't want them to sweep it aside like I was just an old man complaining. And then, the real twist came. I found out from a neighbor Tanya was cheating with a coworker. She wasn't even hiding it. Mark didn't know. Or maybe he did and just didn't care anymore. But that wasn't the worst part. The man she was seeing? He worked at a firm that did estate and elder care management. That's how they figured out how to redirect my Social Security and attempt the power of attorney grab. It wasn't just betrayal anymore. It was a scheme. I had unknowingly funded part of it with the $35,000 I gave Mark when I moved in. They were trying to erase me before I was even dead. That's when I realized this wasn't going to end when I died. I couldn't just leave a letter and hope karma did its job. I had to make sure. I had to make it so they felt it while I was still alive. They thought I was fading, but I was just getting started. Once I learned about Tanya's affair and the scam they were running together, everything clicked. Every cruel little moment suddenly made sense. They weren't just mean, they were strategic, calculated. They were waiting for me to die, and if I didn't go fast enough, they were going to speed it up legally and quietly. They were setting me up to disappear. I moved fast after that. First, I went to the bank. Quietly opened a new account under my name only, different branch, different address. Moved what I could. Transferred some money from an old savings account Mark didn't know about. I'd been setting aside pension money for years that I hadn't touched. Not much, but enough to matter. Then I started talking to a private investigator. Yeah, I spent money I didn't have, but it was worth every penny. He got pictures, screenshots, phone records, even a voice recording of Tanya in her car, talking to the guy she was sleeping with, bragging about how she was milking the old bastard for all he's worth, and Mark's too soft to do what needs to be done. I gave everything to my lawyer. I was ready to go nuclear, but I needed to stay one step ahead. I needed them to keep thinking I was confused, fading, too weak to fight back. So I played the role, limped a little more than I needed to, forgot things I didn't really forget. Let them think I was slipping. Meanwhile, I was building the case. The Social Security fraud report had been quietly escalated. The Adult Protective Services file was growing. They visited once, but Tanya answered the door and told them I was napping and not in the right headspace to talk. But that didn't stop the file from staying open. Then one afternoon, I was sitting on the porch, quiet, invisible, just like they liked it, and I overheard something that changed everything. Mark was on the phone in the kitchen, door half open. "She's pushing me," he said. "Wants me to ask Dad to sign over medical power of attorney. Says it'll make things easier." My body went cold. They were getting ready to decide when and how I'd die. I wasn't just an inconvenience to them anymore. I was a liability. A loose end they wanted to tie off before I could talk, before I could move, before I could act. That was the moment I knew I couldn't wait for karma. I had to move. I had to hit first, and I had to hit hard. I set everything in motion on a Thursday. The night before, Tanya had accidentally spilled hot soup on my lap. Barely apologized. Mark didn't say a word. I went to bed shivering with rage and pain, and I decided I wouldn't spend one more night under their roof. I didn't tell them I was leaving. Just waited until the house was empty the next morning. Mark at work, Tanya at her part-time job, the kids at school. I called a car, packed what little I had left, my documents, meds, the fireproof box, a few clothes, and left. I moved into a modest assisted living apartment with a private nurse I hired part-time. Clean, quiet, mine. Paid up front for the year. They didn't even notice I was gone until late that evening. The text started with fake concern. "Mark? Dad? Where are you? Tanya, you scared us. You can't just leave like that." I didn't answer. I sent one text the next morning. "Everything you've done is documented. You'll hear from the right people soon." And then it all dropped. Within a week, APS called them in. Someone from the Office of the Inspector General reached out to investigate the Social Security fraud. The attempt to redirect my payments was linked back to a specific IP address, their home. Then came the real hit. My lawyer filed an injunction that froze the $35,000 I gave Mark. Turns out he hadn't spent it all. He was holding on to it for investments. The court saw it as elder abuse, especially once they reviewed the PI's report, photos, and recordings. Tanya was hit with a restraining order after threatening me by voicemail once she realized what was happening. It was part of the case package. She said, "You think you're smart, old man? You won't last long enough to enjoy this." My lawyer played that for the judge in full. Mark broke first. Called crying. Said he didn't know what Tanya was doing. Said he just wanted his family to be okay. I told him, "You let her throw away my pillow. You watched me shiver in your house. You said nothing. You were part of it, and now you get your share." He went silent. I hung up. 2 months later, I watched the fallout from my small apartment, sitting comfortably with a blanket Tanya never let me have. Mark lost his job. His company didn't want someone under federal investigation for elder financial abuse. Tanya's affair became public during the APS investigation, her texts, her calls. Mark's sister found out and blasted it all over Facebook. They separated. I heard through a neighbor that Mark had to move into a tiny apartment, selling off what he could. And me? I rewrote my will. Everything goes to charity and the local veterans center where I used to volunteer. Mark and Tanya aren't mentioned, except once, in a letter to be opened after my death. To Mark and Tanya, you taught me how it feels to be invisible, to be used, discarded, and left to rot. I hope what I've left behind reminds you, every day, that even a week-old fool has strength when pushed too far. That was the last thing I gave them. They thought I was dying, but I lived just long enough to make them wish I hadn't.